Okay, chatting shit about the Marsh Cup, episode 3, joined tonight by, I'm told that they're not all from Liverpool, so I'll get it right this time. Joined by the Slow Bros, Phil, Jay and Lewis. How are we all?
Nice.
Good, thanks, you.
Yeah, quality, mate, thanks. A bit of a special tonight. Everything that we're talking about gets absolutely wrecked by Ferrothorn tonight, as Lewis pointed out to me earlier.
Correct.
So I imagine this could go one of two ways. It could go very quickly where we all say, yeah, it beats this and this and this, but loses to Ferrothorn. Or what I'm hoping is that because they all lose to the same thing, and things in general, actually, hopefully we'll be able to talk about the differences more. So fingers crossed that I've got high hopes for this. So also want to say that Stuart Spock in the first episode said that this is a meta where a lot of things could be used and used well. And of the 4 things we're talking about, Jay's picked the lowest ranked, which is no surprise to anyone who knows Jay, of course. But of the 4 we're talking about today, I think it's probably the most viable, in my personal opinion. So certainly worth. If you want to stick around, if you don't normally stick around to the end because it gets spicier, definitely want to stick around for today, I think. Disagree, Phil?
Yeah, strongly.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, for now we'll start with Lewis and your pick.
So my pick is number 346 in the Pokédex. That's for Dan. It's Cradily. So it's grass rock. So it obviously has a lot of interesting coverage. My favourite stat about Cradily is if he has a 1-0 shield advantage, it beats everything in the cup bar 9 things. And only 4 of those you're likely to see. The 3 fighters, Toxie, Heracross and Breloom, but even then 2 of those you're probably not going to see. And obviously we've already discussed Ferrothorn. It's obviously very, very good late game. As I discovered tonight, not so good early on. If shields are in play, it's going to struggle. But if you line it up right towards the end, it can just run through teams one after one. They bring them in and they disappear quickly.
Yeah, presumably we're talking Bullet Seed, Grass Knot, Stone Edge, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really nice coverage, isn't it? When you consider the stuff that's good here. I mean, you can reel off the names: so Crustle, Awak, Calvantula, Swampert, and all the Mud Boys. A lot of the stuff that's good here gets hit hard, and even awkward things like Whimsicott. It's not weak charm; it's doing neutral damage. Yeah. Have you? So you said you used it earlier, sort of early battle, and it didn't go quite well. Why? How would you get it into a situation like late game? Like what would you pair it with? How do you use it like that way?
The situations where it did very well was when I managed to bait out a Mud Boy and lose quite happily, but take a shield or 2, and then come back in with Cradily and just farm it to death. And then you've got energy for days to take on anything and everything they bring back in.
So Galvantula or Crustle?
Yes.
Good shout. Yeah, I think that sort of strategy is. I think that's going to be a real strong strategy in general here. I think there's a lot of stuff that can do that. You could bait out Ferrothorn, with with a different one, and then bring in the AWAC to farm down and hit shadow balls around. I think that strategy is something we'll see a lot of over the course of this month with different mons. So I think that's something. Although Cradily's got that, as you spoke about, that coverage of Grass Knot and Stone Edge, and as we say, that can hit so much of the meta. If your opponent's not got Ferrothorn on the team, like there ain't going to be much that's going to want to take a move from that. It's not like it's walled by anything. Well, it is, but I personally don't think we'll see many counter users at all. We'll see a lot of Ferrothorns, but the ones that don't have Ferrothorns are going to be absolutely quaking in the boots versus a Cradily with energy, because Stone Edge hits damn hard. Like
It does, yeah.
yeah,
It pretty much it one-shots Galvantula.
yeah. I mean, I've done that could one-shot Galvantula, to be fair. But, like, how much does Stone Edge do to AWAC? Like, is that closer?
Good question. I imagine it would be probably 80-90%.
Fair. And it's not like unlike all the other grass types, it's not like it's taking super effective from the fire spins as well because of the rock typing.
Yeah.
What do you guys reckon, Jay, Phil?
I used it quite early on.
Go ahead, Phil.
Go on, Jay. No, it's all right, Jay. You go for it.
I know. So I've only done the one Pracky tournament, and I used it. And I've used Cradily a lot, so I quite like it. The spamminess that, like, I know Lewis was saying it doesn't quite like it early game, but depending on your tactics, like, so my tactic was I was pairing it with Kingdra, so I was using it early game to take away people's shields, save me own, so then I have Kingdra with shields. And I think you just, as long as you can avoid the Ferrothorn, you're pretty much, you're going to take shields off people. But obviously at the end game as well with that Stone Edge, I think it was against you actually, Matthew.
Oh, you destroyed me.
Yeah. I had a bit of energy on it, and then it was Stone Edges was just flying everywhere. So
yeah, I kept on.
It's one of them once it gets on a roll.
Yeah, it was just quick enough with a little bit of an energy lead. I think I got to, with 2 mons, I got to sort of like one fast move away from getting to the charge move, but then just the Cradily got the killing blow in just beforehand. Yeah. Go on, Phil, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I liked. As soon as I saw the cup, I thought, right, Cradily's great because of the rock and the grass. I think I was using it wrong. I was using it as like a safe switch.
Mm.
And of course, Ferrothorn comes in. It's like, oh, right. But yeah, I agree. You can either use it as a spammy opener, or, like Lewis said, mainly as a closer. So it's got play, but it takes a skilled battler to get that energy lead, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I think my issue with using it in the early game is, as Jay was saying, it's the sort of thing that demands shields off your opponent. Like, people are going to shield its moves. I think there's other things that do that here that aren't quite so slow. I know it's fast because Bullet Seed's fast and it's not huge moves. But I feel like there's other stuff that can do that, like slightly quicker. Like Galvantula is a prime example, which I've not got to work personally. I'm still not sure about Galvantula. What else can do it? My mind's gone blank. I guess it's no slower than Ferrothorn, is it? Yeah, fair enough. It's what, like Swampert, I guess. But then I guess if you wanted to use it to clear shields for something like Kingdra, Swampert's probably not the one to do that because similar typings and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess with its coverage as well, it's quite nice to have in the back because, as Lewis says, you can use it for late. You can save it for late game after you've loaded something out. But I guess it's also probably quite a versatile switching because of that typing. Which is something that's I always find is quite valuable. So if you've got a lead that loses to like a horrible pairing of like Swampert and Marowak, which is quite a difficult pairing to cover, or Lapras and Marowak as well, which is just as difficult, I think. It's the sort of thing you could switch into most things, and if you've not got better options there, or you have got better options, but they're much more polarizing, and you want to avoid the rock paper scissors effects. It could be something that could switch into most things, and if it doesn't win, it will leave something within farming range. And we've got a fair few things in this cup which, with a bit of energy, can do a lot of damage. Things like Galvantula, things like Sableye. What they want to see more than anything is an opponent on the field with 15-20% health to farm down. Yeah, and Kingdra as well, as Jay was saying, we probably enjoyed that situation. So, yeah, I see its play. I feel like it's definitely one to practice with. What's its bulk like?
It's not too bad. There's a lot better, but there's also a lot worse.
Yeah. It's got decent bulk.
Yeah, the issue I found was it obviously because of the rock type and it takes neutral to quite a lot of things you would think it should be. So as the Hydro Cannon for a Swampert does 60%, which is obviously if you need shields on it, you can't be taking too many of them.
Yeah, I think that was one of the points I made about Bibarel actually in the first episode, that if Bibarel wants to decides it wants to win switch advantage off Cradily, and Cradily decides it doesn't want to match shields, Bibarel will win switch off it, which it's probably the only grass type that has that issue. But I mean, and that probably doesn't just apply to Bibarel. That's probably about water gunners specifically, which is probably something to bear in mind when we talk about my pick. But how popular water gunners are going to be, I don't know. So I think, as you say, probably Swampert and Mud Boys are probably the biggest issue there, as you say. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Cradily? No? Cool. Okay, we'll move on to my pick then, which is Rainy Castform. So again, obviously murdered by Ferrothorn. Absolutely nothing to hit it with whatsoever. Although I was looking at some sims earlier, and Weather Ball, it is such a good move. Weather Ball still does about 25% to Ferrothorn, which may not sound like a lot, but given how fast it is, even with Water Gun, if the opposing Ferrothorn wants to try and farm you, you're probably going to get to 2. And then with the Water Guns chipping away, you'll come out with energy in the end, and it doesn't really matter how much you'll come out with. By taking with. Let me try that again. You'll come out having taken a fair chunk of health off that Ferrothorn, and yeah, you might have given it a bunch of energy. But if you've got something like, say, Marowak in the back to bring in, what does that energy actually mean to that Ferrothorn?
Yeah,
very little. So I like it for that reason, and I also think, the fact, again, as I was saying, it can demand shields as well. Like, it's deceptively hard hitting. Like, it's not perhaps as bulky as people might think it is, and because of that, the water guns, the weather balls do hit hard, especially after the water gun damage you've already taken. So it's hard hitting, and the water guns come fast enough to allow you to switch into Sableye, as long as you switch it in before it gets. I think if you've got a good IV Castform, you can switch in after 2 Shadow Claws and win in all even shield scenarios still, and that's quite big for things that don't resist foul play. I mean, there's things like the Dark Poisons can sort of do that as long as they take the shield return and don't get baited. Yeah. But for something that doesn't have to worry about that, and can just straight up take the foul plays, I think that's quite impressive. Like things like Lapras struggle to do that, which is bulky. Like, I think Lapras can win the 1s but not the 2s. I think Shadow Lapras can win the 2s but not the 1s, or something like that. I think Swampert and Shadow Swampert have a similar sort of thing, where one of them can win 1s, one of them can win 2s. Azu has to worry about taking the return, and that just about squeaks by sometimes, even resisting foul plays. So I think it's actually a really impressive feat, and there's stuff here where, well, as I mentioned previously with when we talked about Cradily, there's stuff here that with a bit of an energy gain can run through 2 or 3 things like Sableye, like Garfantula, and so it's all right beating something, but I think fast move activation time is going to be huge here as well, because then you give your opponent the chance to shield first, and then whether that you're going to match your opponent's shields you're not going to give your opponent a shield advantage. I think that's what I really like about Castform. Because it's by the ball, because it's 35 energy, you're likely to get to that move first before your opponent. So yeah, that's more or less the thoughts I had on it. And also, sorry, I know I'm going on a bit of a tirade here. I think there's a lot to say about Castform. It's also got the Thunder as well, and that's going to be very handy for beating other water types. Like you might see some Laprases running around with Skull Bash as the big hit against other water types. You know, Azu's got Play Rough. Castform's got Thunder. Like that's going to give everything trouble. Yeah. So yeah. Anyone got any thoughts on Castform?
I mean, that 2 Shadow Claw switching kind of went under the radar when I was doing my analysis on Sableye. I think when PvPoke does save switches, it does 6 turns or something, so it might just slip through the net on things that beat it. So yeah, 2 Shadow Claws, you're right, even shields. That's impressive. I
mean, it's got to be a real good rank one to do it in 2s.
Yeah.
Still, I feel like, I mean, it's a bit of a niche pick, but it has been good before, and it's the sort of thing where if you're going to invest in it, it's an expensive investment. You're probably going to only invest if you've got a good one. Would be my advice.
Yeah.
It's pretty much maxed out, isn't it? If I remember.
More or less. I think mine's level 39.
Yeah.
What would you pick? I have one, but it's not a good rank. Literally, the only reason I made it was because I caught it by the boot at level 35. So, like rank 600 or something like that, but
fair.
Still wasn't that much to do with it.
Yeah. What would I pair it with? So I was thinking about this. And I was thinking
like Marowak is obviously the obvious one, and then
well, what I was thinking was a line of a Marowak lead, and then Castform and something like Shiftry in the back. Like I think the idea of having 2 things in the back of any line that can both switch into Sableye, because there's not much that can switch into Sableye in and win 1 shields and 2 shields. I think Castform does it. In fact, I've got a list somewhere, but it's down there. Castform does it.
AWAC,
Shiftry does it. Azu does it, and
Amok
doesn't win ones. Amok has to worry about return. Yeah, and if you've got a real good Azu can do it as well. Just even if you get double baited, Azu can just about win it straight Ice Beam. So I like the idea of having 2 things in the back that can switch into Shiftry, and you've got the choice of what you switch into it depending on switch into
Sableye.
Yeah, and you've got the choice of what you can go to depending on what the opponent's lead was. So if the opponent led, let's say the opponent led. Give me something that lead Crustle.
The Mudboy. So they keep Shiftry for the Mudboy.
Yeah. Or Crustle, you'd keep Castform for the Crustle, and you'd switch him the Shiftry. And again, it's got that thing of you could switch so Castform, you could switch it into the Sableye. Sableye might choose to take a shield advantage if your opponent knows its matchups, which is a fairly niche thing. People might not necessarily know the matchups. They could take the shield advantage, come back in with the Ferrothorn, but then you're in the situation where I was describing earlier, where what's that shield advantage? Well, what's that?
Switch advantage gained you, all that energy.
Yeah, all that energy you've got on Ferrothorn is just going to be dissipated versus AWAC. So yeah, I think it's got some serious play if you can. Yeah, I think if you can figure out a way to get round being at a shield disadvantage, which I mean, as much as the selling point is that it beats Sableye in 1s and 2s, I think you still got to be careful of getting around that. Like if you've got nothing to come in and farm Whimsicott or nothing to come in and farm Ferrothorn, it could be in for a hard time. But yeah.
So are you preferring the likes of Rainy Castform over Azu then, for example?
I think so. Swampert, I don't know. I think it's a different beast to Swampert.
Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah, Swamp's that mud boy, but
yeah, I certainly prefer it to Azu.
Yeah.
I think Azu, it's just not quite got the same speed, and I don't know. I just always struggle with Azu. I feel like with Azu, it's great if you've won the lead and you've won Switch. Like Azu's never going to let you down if the game's in control. But
yeah,
if you try to come back from a bad place, I don't think Azu's ever going to switch things around for you. And so I'd rather have something like Castform that can just, sometimes it'll get to 100 energy and you've almost got 3 weather balls banked and stuff like that can come out of nowhere and just annihilate things. You've also got the bait option of baiting a weather ball and then landing a thunder on something. I just think it just has more play generally.
To be honest, I've not used Rainy Castform that much. I was going to use it in the tournaments, but Phil decided not to pick it for me when I asked him to and let Magic Ian do it instead.
Oh, fucking.
You started giving me like Cresselia and Zapdos and other random things that weren't Rainy Castform.
Amazing things that,
I think one thing that is worth shouting out though is actually Watergun Lantern, because people think Castform and you sort of think probably it's similar coverage to Lantern, does similar things, and that's true to an extent. What you get in with Castform is the ability to beat Mud Boys. What you get in with Watergun Lantern is you retain the ability to switch into Sableye, I believe, in 1s and 2s, and that's one that won't come up on PvP because the Sims will show Spark. But by having Watergun and that added electric typing, I believe you beat Galvantula fairly comfortably as well if you're willing to put the shields in and coming out with a fair bit of energy there. So I would suggest anyone who's considering Castform should also probably look at Watergun Lantern and have a look at some of the Sims for that.
You're going to lose that Sableye switching.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to lose that Sableye switching.
From a standing start,
let's see if
you can do it.
If it's a standing start, let's just double check that.
Like VAR, this.
Take it to VAR.
Yeah. Have you got good IVs on the Lantern in the Sim?
Let's have a look. Maximize. I do have now. Good. Yep, still dies.
Okay.
It loses the 1s, but it's winning the 2s because of that pure water gun.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that's something you can always rely on with water gun. I mean, it's not quite Charm, it's not quite Dragon Breath, it's not quite Razor Leaf, but it'll do a lot of damage.
It's got some bit of oppression on it.
Yeah. Ooh, any further thoughts on Castform, anyone? Okay, well let's move on to Phil's pick then. Phil, what have you gone with?
I've gone with Pokédex number 195. Quagsire.
Okay, Quagsire. What? I mean, my first question is before anything else, why Quagsire, not Swampert?
Right. Okay. So I knew this was coming. The mons that you're going to be facing, the majority of the mons you're going to be facing, I'd much rather be hitting a Stone Edge than a Hydro Cannon. So I know you've got Lapras and Dugong. You're going to have those rogue flyers out there. So if someone decides, Mantine was good last month, let's use Mantine again.
I hope no one does that. Please don't.
It's funny you should mention this because I've looked back into Mantine because you did mention before a Purr, which are tough to beat, Mudboy, and AWAC. Mantine. So it sounds silly, but no, you need a Mudboy. Galvantula, Crustle, they're going to be everywhere. AWAC. You definitely need a mud boy. I prefer Quag on first look.
So, does it drop anything that Swampert beats, or I mean, presumably it doesn't do as great against the other mud boys.
The Swampert mirror is the only one.
Right. Okay. And can it switch into Galvantula still? Presumably. Yeah.
Unless somebody's using Galvantula correctly and is running Energy Ball. No wonder you're struggling, mate. It's because you've not got Energy Ball in your Galvantula.
Hey, I did well tonight. I won 8 of me 12. 8 of me 12. That's solid. I mean, only 2 of the 4, but 8 of the 12. Yeah. What do you guys think? Any play for Quagsire, do you reckon?
What are you running with Stone Edge? Earthquake or Sludge Bomb?
Earthquake, 100%.
That's interesting because that's sort of an issue that Swampert has to deal with. You only run Earthquake or Sludge Wave, and my inclination is to go Earthquake as well, even on Swampert. I think people talk about having Sludge Bomb there to hit Whimsicott, just in case, but I feel like that's such a niche just in case. I feel like if you're going to end up with Swampert versus locked in against Whimsicott, you're probably in quite a bad place anyway, and whether that's going to rescue it, I don't know.
I reckon that bulk on Quag might get you to an extra move, to be honest.
Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of the really good things about Quag is how bulky he is, like especially like, you know, because the Marowak can land a Shadow Ball and it's just like Quagsire just laughs at it. You know? You don't have to worry about shielding, but if you swamp it, you are like, you do want to shield. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if you're running Shadow, like a few people are running Shadow Swamp it now as well.
I want to give Shadow Swamp it a go.
You can't take the chance of not shielding against the Marowak. Whereas Quagsire, you just don't have to bother.
Yeah. And I think
tank one easily.
Quagsire has that sort of nice bulk as well, where there's a lot of HP on it, which makes it very hard to farm down. Which I think is, well, it always feels harder to farm down things like Quagsire, Driftblim, you know, the real heavy HP stuff. I don't know whether you guys find similar, but maybe that's just an anecdotal thing. And I always like the bulk to work that way.
The amount of times a Ferrothorn's tried to farm down Quagsire because I've got a mon in the back that it needs to throw on it as well. I've got an Earthquake off. See you later. Doesn't matter. See you later. Done.
Because presumably, I mean, it's Swamp. I was looking at Shadow Swampert, I think this morning on my way into work on the bus, and I saw that Shadow Swampert's Earthquake does 75% to Ferrothorn. I would guess, based on that Quagsire's Earthquake does probably about 55. Yeah,
it's just over half.
Yeah, so it's still a big chunk, and you know, as the Ferrothorn player, if you didn't have, well, I'm a Mud Boy against the Grass type, I'm not going to shield. If you didn't have that in your head, you might want to shield a move that was going to do 55% of your health. Yeah. So I must admit, I played a Beedrill tonight, and I came down to the end, and it was Beedrill versus Swampert, and I thought, I've got this because I just get to the Hydro Cannon before he gets to a drill run. And I did, but then Hydro Cannon did about 60%. It was a bit disappointing.
Where's that Stone Edge?
Yeah, where's that Stone Edge? Food for thought. Definitely. And how did, as you were saying, it doesn't really lose anything apart from Swampert. Does that mean you have to run anything special with it? Like, is perhaps Double Grass a nice little strat for the Quagsire teams?
I'm going to look into Double Grass next, because at the moment in my head I was like, oh, it's a Mud Boy, it's going to lose to Grass. But today I've started realising, hang on, Swampert's my main threat here, not the Grass, because if I'm running Quag instead of Swampert, I need something that beats Swampert now. So no, I think that's a good shout.
I mean, it sounds to me like you need one of my favourite mons. It sounds to me like you need Golbat to pick up Swampert.
Do,
And
do you know what? I have looked into Golbat.
yeah,
I watched a lovely video by King this morning with Shadow Golbat. So yeah, I'm going to look into that.
let me say this much: Shadow Golbat beats Swampert in the 0s and 2s straight Shadow Ball, I believe. But normal Golbat has to bait to get. I think normal Golbat gets 1s. I think straight Shadow Ball. Shadow Golbat gets 0s and 2s. But then normal Golbat gets Ferrothorn straight Shadow Ball. So they're both similar, obviously, but they do swing matchups. It's certainly one to consider, the Shadow versus the normal. Absolutely one to consider versus. But yeah, it sounds to me like Golbat is like the ideal partner for Quagsire.
Right, that's in my team for tomorrow then.
There you go. Yeah, and that maybe eradicates the need for double grass because you're beating them up with a flyer. Yeah.
Nice one.
You can thank me later, Phil. To bring that in.
Oh, I'll thank you now. Thank you very much.
Solid,
That's a great show.
solid strat.
Yeah, I mean, Golbat's thing is, I prefer not to go too off topic. I was talking about this with Jen and Twiggy the other night. Golbat doesn't have the shield pressure that a lot of things in this cup have, because Shadow Ball, yeah, it's a hard hitting move, but it's not stab. And no one's thinking, oh, I need to save my shields for Poison Fang, like, it's not going to do much. So I kind of would lean towards Shadow Golbat, personally. Just because it's with the extra shield pressure. But
Shield pressure, yeah.
I don't mind talking about Golbat a bit too much, because realistically, I feel like if anyone was ever going to choose Golbat in Championship this month, it was probably going to be me, and I'm not going to do it. So yeah. Cool. Well, if we've got no further thoughts on Quagsire.
No, cheers, Matt. Nice one.
Yeah, there you go. No further thoughts on Quagsire, then we'll move on to Jay's pick, which I'm dead excited about.
Cool. So it's Kingdra, and it's got a false rank on PV Poke of 88th, because it's got its moveset down as Dragon Breath, Outrage, and Blizzard. So if you change Blizzard for Octazooka, it just changes so many of the matchups. Like, even like not baiting, just a lot of them you can just go like the straight Octazooka. You get the possibility of the debuff on their attack. So like, for example, 2 shields, you've got 208 wins, which is 80%. The ones ain't that great. It's just
Ones
over
is terrible.
50%. Yeah. But in the 0s, which is where I've been looking at trying to use it when I was practicing with it the other day. It only says 195 wins here. But if you get a couple of Dragon Breaths in, and this is even with, like, I was taking off the health as well, like when I was looking at this, trying to make it like average out. So you get 2 or 3 Dragon Breaths in, it takes that up to 223 wins, which is like nearly 90%. It's like 88% or something like that wins on 0s. And then if you give a shield advantage, it's just ridiculous. Like, it will lose. I think Lewis said before, Cradily in the 1 shield. If you've got 1 shield and they've got none, Cradily has 9 things that beat it. Kingdra only has 5 things that beat it. One of them's Azu, the other's Shadow Cloister, the other's Fortress, and then you've got Whimsicott and Ferrothorn. So other than that, it beats everything else with a shield. It's 1 shield.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Some of the stats are crazy. I just feel like it's gone so under the radar. And then when I was using it the other day, I was just like, this really works. If you give it a shield advantage, like, I mean, I know I've chatted shit about some really crap picks, but this one, I'm really confident about this one being a good one. And
it was our first pick for Forest, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's fantastic as a closer. Blizzard, why does it suggest Blizzard? Because even in 0s, it's not beating the certain grass with Blizzard anyway. So I don't.
It's not getting
and
there.
the steals. So it's like the Octazooka gives you a lot of steel win as well, because like, I mean, you not might see that much steel other than foragers, but Ferrothorn, but you've got foragers, but you're still not going to pick that up in the zeros. But you've got Escavalier, Scizor, if you want to be really spicy, like it can pick them up even though they've got the dragon resistance.
Trashy Dam?
Getting the water move. Yeah, beats that.
Wow, it's Wormadam, flipping out. Although I guess Wormadam...
it loses against Wormadam in the ones.
But yeah, if you've got the shield advantage.
But in twos, it beats it unless you...
Right, the zeros, yeah. It
zeros.
doesn't beat it in the zeros, but it beats in the twos, right?
So right at the beginning, Phil, when I said I think Jays is the most... what was the word I used? The most...
Viable.
Viable, that was it. Sorry,
Yeah,
I've had okay. When I said I thought Jays was the most viable and you disagreed, was that because you think Kingdra is bad or you think Quagsire is better, out of interest?
No, I love Kingdra. It's just there's going to be a lot of steel. So as much as I love Kingdra, I want something that's consistently beating the steels. Considering the steels are going to be the steel bugs, a rock throw would, a stone edge will be very useful at that point.
Fair enough. So when
just my team build. Sorry.
Fair. No, of course. When I first found out that Jay was going to be using Kingdra for chatting shit, I thought, wow, that sounds like a brilliant idea. And so I actually put it in my team for a practice tournament. And it didn't fail me. It was an awful team. The team that I picked, it was like Kingdra with double fairy or something. Like it was just really bad. But Kingdra was like the one saving grace from that team. I think it's interesting that you spoke about it as a closer though, because I like using it as a lead. Given its two shield matchups and the potential it has to beat most things in the twos. I mean, most of the time you're only getting one shield out of those things, but you're coming out with a lot of energy still, and you can hit the next thing with an outrage. And then you've won switch advantage, and if you put spammy things in the back with good coverage, so something like Ferrothorn and Swampert, for example, in the back, or Quagsire, if you're that way inclined, so put things like that in the back, it's real hard to beat. And I think leading it as well means you can protect it from your Whimsicots, from your Ferrothorns, from your Azus. And when you've got options like Sableye as a safe switch, you can use that really strong save switch that we've got available to try and wrestle back switch advantage. Because as we mentioned, there's not a great deal that beats Sableye in twos with a couple of Shadow Claws lead. And then, as long as you're spending 2 shields on your Sableye, not 1, because that's the key. As we said, it's not great in the ones, so you've got to make sure your Kingdra's either in 2s or 0s, because if you have the end game as the 1s, you're sort of in between the 2.
You're going to come across teams without steals, without furries.
Yeah.
And it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
As a safe switch.
I had it as I started. So the first 2 rounds, I was using it mainly as a lead and just kept catching the Ferrothorn, and I was like, piss off. But I did have Toxie, and then I started like messing around, and then I was getting, and then it was when I was using it as a closer, I think it was against Dan, and I was like, okay, and then I bothered to look up all the stats today. Like I had a bit of time, and I was like, all right. So obviously, in the twos, they're still getting 80%. But as a closer, then even 2 shields to 1, it's like a 90% win ratio.
Right.
Like it's just, I just feel like it's gonna be, if people use it right. This is the one. This is the one where I can convince people to use the fucking thing.
What do you reckon, Lewis? Any thoughts on Kingdra?
No, I like it. I agree with Phil. I think there's going to be at least 1 or 2 steals on quite a lot of teams, and that's where it might struggle. But against everything else, it's got a lot of play.
Yeah, I think it's similar to. Well, it's what I've said about Bibarel as well. It's one of those mons where it's either going to be poor as we put on Steam, in which case you don't bring it, or it's going to be really good and you're going to beat 4 or 5 things, which is going to make it dangerous. And I think in some ways it's quite similar to Whimsicott in that sense. I think the reason I actually prefer Kingdra to Whimsicott for that in that role of being a 0 shield closer or a 2 shield lead, because Whimsicott just isn't getting to charge moves. It's just not. And even you can come up against something like Marowak and be walled completely. Dazzling Gleam will do about 30%, I guess. But Kingdra, I mean, unless you're coming up against the fairy type, you never. I feel like with Dragon Breath and Outrage, you're never going to be walled completely. Like I feel like Outrage probably still does about 40% to Ferrothorn or pushing that. So if you're caught in a bad matchup, which is probably game ending anyway, I guess. I feel like Kingdra is the one you want in that scenario rather than Whimsicott. And what I also liked about Kingdra when I first looked at it after Jay suggested it, I saw that it beats. Like I felt like when I first looked at Kingdra, what I liked about it was that it beat Galvantula, AWAC, Mudboys, and Crustle. So it beats Galvantula and all its counters. So I sometimes use it as like the sort of best in category of Galvantula counters, as long as I was willing to commit 2 shields to it. I think the Crustle one's close. I think you have to get an Octazooka drop against Crustle, but you get 2 opportunities to get that. So it's a 3 out of 4 chance. So happy enough with that.
Oh, that's good math. That's good math.
Still got it.
That pleases me.
Still got it.
Phil's got a log on.
Yeah, that's the only stats you'll get from me tonight, I'm afraid. Yeah. Well, and unless there's any other thoughts on Kingdra, let's wrap up.
What we pairing at Kingdra with then, Jay?
Well, apparently Sableye.
Great shout.
Need to get yourself one of them.
I think what I like about, at the risk of exposing any strats here, one of my favourite ways to use Kingdra, in theory, I've not actually done this yet, but is to lead it, have AWAC in the back and Sableye as a switch. Then if you do come up against it doesn't work if your opponent's got Whimsicott, but if they've got anything else, or rather for that matter, if Ferrothorn's the sort of designated Kingdra counter or Wormadam Trash, you sort of save switch into the Sableye. They will then counter switch because they'll want to still need to save Ferrothorn for Kingdra, and then you've got that amazing matchup of AWAC versus that Steel Grass or Steel Bug in the back, and to try and take advantage of later. And I think that's going to be. And to be honest, I think lining up your AWAC against the Ferrothorn is going to decide a lot of games this month coming.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of close matchups actually in this. A lot of close matchups, but the ones like Whimsicott versus Sableye, you're coming out with energy that you can't do much with. The ones like Ferrothorn versus Mudboy, you're coming out with energy that you can't always do much with. AWAC versus Ferrothorn, you're coming out with energy and you've got Shadow Balls, and that's always handy. So yeah, I feel like that could be a nice little strat, but I don't know. I haven't used it yet, so we'll have to see. Yeah. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
No, I'm happy.
I think we've smashed it, yeah?
Hey, do you know what? It's been really succinct, but I feel like this has been probably the most informative chatting shit we've had so far.
Best advert for Ferrothorn yet?
Best advert for Ferrothorn, yeah. not that Ferrothorn needs any advertising. That's
No.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. I'm sure I'll catch up with you at some
Cheers
point
for
during the
having us,
month.
No, yeah, nice one for having us, yeah.
Yeah, four great picks. I'm sure
I
we'll see a lot
expect
more for.
everyone to have Kingdra. For real.
I'll give it a go.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely worth a go.
It's the Zangoose. It's the Zangoose of the Marsh Cup, everybody.
It is, yeah.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
At least I bloody used my pick in every tournament I did.
Yeah, I've got to give you credit for that. Got to give you credit for that.
I mean, that's why I only won like 2 matches, but yeah, it's fine.
Kingdra, I'm sure would do better than that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Kingdra's
yeah.
good.
Nice one. Right, guys. Catch you all later.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
Yeah.